Well, hello everyone. This is Wilson Cole, president of Adams, Evans and Ross, and Backdoor Hire Solutions, and senior partner or managing director of ELOC Global. And I am joined by Samantha, our staff attorney, general counsel, and my lovely daughter. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine. You know, Sam, you and I are going to be doing a webinar on the 5 warning signs here shortly, and one of the warning signs, they're the very first warning sign I want to cover, but when we periodically do this webinar throughout, I've periodically done this webinar periodically over the last 10 or 15 years. Right now, because everybody, the economy is fighting COVID, it's more critically important now than it ever has been to just start focusing on good fundamentals and also to pay attention to the warning signs. The first warning sign is before you have just absolute, chaos, is you start seeing a good client start running a little further out, a bad client running a little further out. They start, if they paid at 15 days, they're paying at 30 or 45 days. In my opinion, you should have had, and especially in this COVID economic climate, you need to make sure that you have your timesheets. You need to make sure you have your fee agreements if you're doing direct hire. You need to pull credit applications, credit checks, and things along those lines. That should have already been done. Under this COVID issue, the thing that I would recommend that everybody does before you run into this first sign is immediately right now go out and recheck all of your clients' credit. What was true 6 months or a year ago could be absolutely nothing further from the truth, from a aspect of, if they've lost major clients, if they've had to lay off, if there was a divorce. Right now they could be fighting some pretty significant cash flow issues, and what was a vibrant company 12 months ago may be a company that's getting into trouble. So what we're going to do is a kind of a series of these small videos to promote this new webinar, and also the webinar, if you send me an email, hey Wilson, I want to join in on this webinar, email me wilson@aercollections.com and say, can you send me the 5 signs webinar link? You can also go to our website and register from there as well. But Sam, the first signs that you run into is that good client running behind. Maybe they're always paid at 15 days. Maybe now they're at 30. Maybe they're stretching up to 45 days. What, from a legal aspect, from a collection aspect, we've already talked about it. Go pull credit on everybody, even if they're not behind. From a legal aspect, what do they need to do to make sure that before they get into that storm, they're covered?
Well, I think having your paperwork from the beginning in line is the best thing you can do. When they're 45 days behind isn't the time you realize, oh shit, we don't have a signed contract.
True.
That's not the moment you need to have that in place. But then also keeping up with any correspondence going forward. If they're sending you an email on day 31 that says, I am so sorry, I know I owe this completely, I'm going to pay it next week. Keeping those emails that continue to show this intention to pay, and that it makes it much harder for them if you do have to go through the legal route or even have it come through collections and then go, I don't owe it because of this reason, and this reason, if they've been saying all along the check's in the mail.
And what you're talking about, Sam, for anybody that doesn't understand, in the industry, it's called a reaffirmation of debt. That's actually a really good idea. Would you start, if you're a little worried, would you start trying to maybe create the atmosphere to where you get an email back where they reaffirm the debt? I mean, because that, in my opinion, from a collection standpoint,
push for it and kind of back them into a corner where they could try to argue distress or something like those, which I always, like I tell clients when they're mad about something that's been signed, it's like, okay, unless the gun was to your head, but you don't want to give them those sorts of arguments. but say I see no issue, and can you please tell me when this is going to be paid, to try to get them to say, hey, I know this is
Or, send over an email and say, look, I know all the timesheets are signed. I'm assuming our people are doing a good job. It looks like quality reports are good. Or even before that, before you start pounding them for money, get a quality check email to where they say, oh, you guys are doing great, or what have you. That way, if it does come to collection, then at that point, it winds up giving us additional documentation. The first sign is almost like the first signs of a hurricane before you had satellite, is you may see a little rougher water. You may feel a breeze kind of coming in a little stronger, maybe see some weird clouds. That first phase is where you start looking for the those warning signs. In my opinion, in this COVID atmosphere, because right now we're midway, whenever you're watching this video, it's July. We're midway through it. I have said from day one, for small businesses, unless you're outside the hospitality industry, that we wouldn't see the downside of COVID until we got into the third and the fourth quarter, the damages from the slow pays and things along those lines. In the next 90 days, in my opinion, this is where you're going to start seeing the economic downturn. And hopefully I'm wrong. I still think you're going to have companies that mismanaged it, that you're going to need to know what those warning signs are. It's step one right now. I would basically say the atmosphere, it's almost like storm warnings where we don't know if storms or where storms are going to show up, but the weather conditions are good for a storm. The economic conditions are good for a storm. And step one is look for those clients that are, certainly there's a little bit of difference, but I would go back, do an inventory check, make sure you have signed contracts on all of your clients. Go back and make sure that you have all of the documentation, and pull credit on every single client that you have. We have a small fee that we charge for unlimited credit reports. It's like $59 a month. I don't care if you use ours. If you go back and check 3 trades in a bank on a credit application, you use Dun & Bradstreet, whatever you do, go ahead and get signed up. And if you're a little concerned about the credit or how somebody is paying, Samantha is absolutely right. Try to get some type of confirmation. Email is better than phone, because phone's kind of he said, she said. Email is documentation, to where if it graduates up to the second and the third sign and you need to turn it over to collections, it's going to give us more to work on. But get that confirmation that everything's okay. Join us on the webinar. If you click down in the body, if you go down to the show notes on this email, you'll also see where there's a link to where you can sign up either for the webinar, the live webinar, or the replay. Just click on the link below this particular video. Samantha, any closing statements on the very first sign? And next week we're going to do the second sign as this thing kind of graduates up. But any suggestions for the clients I didn't cover?
Just stay organized.
Organization's a good thing.
Everybody's working remote, and it feels like you can't find anything, if you're at your kitchen table. But now's not the time to lose documentation.
And I agree with you 100%. And right now may be a wonderful time to build on that documentation, have somebody go out and pull inventory of what you have. And maybe it's a neat way to reach out to some of your existing clients and get them to re-sign new contracts and things on those lines. And who knows, maybe that touch point gets new business your way. Join us on our webinar. Click on the link down in the show notes below. We'd love to see you at the full webinar, where we're going to cover all 5 signs. Sam, as always, thanks for joining me.
Sounds great.